Uh, Charlie, there is a personal note on the end of this side for you. In the meantime, this is a sort of a story of my musical experience from the time I was a small boy. I hope you enjoy it. The organ music is on the other side of the tape. Looking around for the reason for that mood. I had just listened to a recording of my own organ music. This is entirely an impulsive sort of music. It isn't read from anything. It's just fed out of my mind, and as one impulse leads to another, well, you go from one song to another and you work into it various harmonies that you particularly associate to that song. And strangely enough, I can sit down and listen to my own playing and live it all over again with the joy that went into doing it with my own fingers comes back to me as a musical spirit that projects itself right back to me again, and it's an interesting response to my own music. The response, I think, would be there whether it was my own music or somebody else's, because it speaks to something within me which created it in the first place, if I can use that phrase. As I sat thinking about this, I thought back over the years, what was my various strange exposures to music? This blessing that's beyond price, beyond calculation. Something that can't be bought. It's something that God gives you. It's a special gift. I think my first exposure to music possibly may have been listening to my mother play certain E.T. Paul renditions of piano music, such as the Roaring Volcano and the Midnight Flyer and the Burning of Rome and the Chariot Race and the Carnival of Venice. All of these different special piano renditions that really, by their very nature, charmed the little guy who was just barely big enough to respond, and in certainly an uneducated way, to the thrill of the movement of those songs. And Mom used to play them so well on the piano while I was a little guy sat on the Davenport listening. Then I think about probably my first effort of music of my own was when my folks got me a mouth organ. And I can definitely remember laying in bed there and playing certain songs over and over and over again that I knew, such as Home Sweet Home and simple little songs like Way Down on the Swanee River, and those I would play them over and over again. Anybody who listened to me probably go nuts. But nevertheless, this was doing something for me to make those songs come alive myself. And somewhere early on, my folks bought me a little phonograph. I think it was a Christmas present, probably for my brother and I. And of course, we had about 4 records. And believe it or not, from breakfast until supper time, those same 4 records got pretty monotonous. I have to give my parents the credit, especially my mother, that had to live through hours and hours of those same records being played over and over again. I'm not sure I can remember what they are now. But speaking of records reminds me of the orthophonic Victrola, which was supreme in music, recorded music in those days. My sister bought an orthophonic Victrola, and early on she bought records of Jesse Crawford's organ music. I can still remember sitting listening to that organ music hours at a time, even into the wee small hours in the morning. And in those days we had an old Fried-Eisman battery-operated radio, and we could pick up certain distant radio stations such as WOWO Fort Worth, Texas, and we used to get there was other ones. There was Fort Wayne. There was Chicago stations we could pick up in the Fisher Building in Detroit, where this organ music would come through. This Fisher Building broadcast from Detroit had canaries in the background singing bird music to the organ music, and this was especially beautiful music coming over the radio. Of course, we had no TV. Excuse me, no TV in those days. It was all just radio, and we would sit and listen to that radio till the wee small hours in the morning and run the battery all down, and it wouldn't get back in one day. So that us, especially myself, I say us kids, because I don't remember too much about how my brother was involved in this music, but I know that my own approach to it was very singular. I was feeding myself with this musical spirit, I guess you might say. But needless to say, the batteries didn't charge up enough in one evening so that there was battery enough to run it the next day. It had a 6-volt automobile battery in there to drive the thing. Well, early on, I don't know what age I might have been, maybe 11 or 12, I sent away and got a 24 bass accordion and a little white job with sparklers all over it. And I'll tell you, I was almost out of this world with the joy that I got out of that first musical instrument. And of course, it had a piano keyboard on the one side and 24 basses on the other, which give me major and minor chords. And it wasn't long before I could play almost anything that I ever heard. My own rendition of it, of course. And then one day I remember being into a second-hand store, and I swapped off my accordion for a reed organ. And I brought the reed organ home, put it upstairs in my bedroom, and lo and behold, a couple of days that entire bedroom was infested with bed bugs. And oh boy, did I catch it. But anyway, Mom went to work on them, and she got the bed bugs cleaned out, and I had the joy of my reed organ for a while. And then somewhere along the way, I don't remember now whether it was the reed organ or whether just what the rotation was, but I got swapped off a second-hand store a big brass trombone. And I can remember I must have been 13 or 14 years old, and I would sit in the early hours of the morning moaning away on that big brass trombone. I wondered what the neighbors thought. But I had a lot of fun with that big old brass trombone. And it just might be that I swapped that for the organ. I can't remember the exact order that those things came into my life, but in the meantime, my brother was playing a trumpet and taking lessons on it at school, and I learned to play that pretty well, enough so that I could play my own songs on it without reading any music, of course. And about that time, Mother went into Grinnell's and bought me a brand new violin. And I started taking violin lessons from Max Helmer. It cost Mom $1 a week. And in those days, $1 was a lot of money. And Max Helmer would have maybe 8 kids in his class, and we'd take a lesson once a week, and he would get his $1 from each one of us. And I learned to play the violin. And somewhere along the way, Mom invested in a maybe that first violin was a used one. It was a slightly smaller than the standard violin. And when she finally purchased a brand new one at Grinnell Brothers, I think she paid $125 for it. A beautiful new violin and case and everything. And it was just slightly larger than the other. And it really set me back for a little while until I could get used to this larger one, because the small one played so much easier. So I had to really work on this bigger violin. But finally got to where the neighborhood kids got together down at Archie Welch's house, and we had an orchestra. We had Ozzie Shuttle played the piano, and Herb Crawford played the drums, and Billy Berman played the clarinet, and Jerry Chesley came over with his saxophone, and Archie played the banjo, and Billy Berman got himself a B-flat sax, which is almost as tall as he was, and I played the violin, and we would get together, a couple times a week in Archie Welch's big living room. And we found out that the neighbors were gathering around on their front porches listening to our music. And we got a repertoire of some 45 or 50 copies of orchestrated music, so that everybody had their own part. And we were really having a good time putting these things together. Then we went out to try to commercialize. We went downtown and checked in with a club down there to see if maybe our music was advanced enough so that we could earn some money at it. And it wasn't quite good enough for them, but I can remember along about that same time having a small accordion and playing out in the country for dances. Just a small group of us. I think there was a banjo and the accordion. I can't remember too much about it, but there was Saturday night dances out in an open field with a dance floor, and so much a dance, 10 cents a dance, I suppose, and us guys were putting on the music. Memories in that direction are a little bit vague, but I do know it happened somewhere out toward Gillis Lake in Jackson. And one night after the beer became legal again, I stopped into a beer garden after I got out of work in the evening, and after a couple of beers where I sat down at the piano and discovered that I could play a little bit. And I remember the first song I tried to play out in public like that was the Wabash Blues. And I'd had just enough beer, so I was feeling good, and Wabash Blues come out of there like you wouldn't believe. And from that time on, any time I got in there, why, they would ask me to play the piano, and then there would be 2 or 3 couples get out there in the middle of the room and dance to it. And they got to be kind of a regular thing for a while. And as I began to get a little more older and a little more mature in the music, I started playing around the beer gardens. I had quite a run out to the old the Stone Blacksmith shop out on the Horton Road. I go out every Saturday and Sunday night, and I got $3 a night for playing out like that. And then of course you get all the beer you can drink. And it was not unusual to drink a half a case of beer all alone because you're working it off as fast as you drink it. But anyway, that was less than $1 an hour. We're going about 4 hours every night. And I remember one New Year's Eve when we played all night long for $4. and there was a little liquor, whiskey or whatever, was consumed during that session. But as you could well expect, for 8 hours of music like that, took quite a lot of moist food to give it a name, beer and drinks and so on. And as I come to think about it, I guess we did have some chili along the way too. But anyway, here's more music, gradually developing, and still on the piano, of course. Then we moved to Saginaw. Stopped at Flynn on the way, but not much happened there. But in Saginaw, things began to happen, and I tied into Grinnell Brothers there and started repairing Hammond organs for Grinnell's. And during my spare time, I'd get up on the 3rd floor of the Grinnell's store there in Saginaw and play those Hammond organs up on the 3rd floor. And I got so that I was so enthused by the Hammond organ, I just simply had to have one. Well, strange things happened. I went downtown one day, and I think it was this outfit that went around and put on a circus for the kids. They called it the Shrine Circus. Had brought a Hammond organ in, and it had been around. The connections were getting bad on it, and they sent me in there to repair those connections. So a Hammond organ was set right side of the pipe organ in that big civic auditorium there in Saginaw. So after I got the Hammond organ working, I peeked up under the canvas that had the pipe organ console covered up, and while I was peeking underneath there, the janitor come along. He says, "The switch is over there. Turn it on. Why don't you play it?" Oh boy, I'll tell you, I couldn't have been any closer to heaven at that moment. So sure enough, we threw the cover back and started playing that pipe organ. And I'm telling you, I would have married that pipe organ right then and there if strange events hadn't have happened. But while I was still there, I played the organ, and the outfit that was putting on the circus all gathered around, and there was nothing to do but sit and listen to that organ music till I finally had to leave because it was time to go to work at Consumers. And so I shut the thing down, resolved to go back and give them all of my spare time until I could put that pipe organ in operating order, just for the pleasure of playing it. Well, strange things happened. I was immediately given word that I was transferring to Jackson, just when I had made contact to play that big old pipe organ. I was being transferred to Jackson. Well, came back to Jackson, and I tied in with the First Methodist Church down there. Ed Kroll was the organist, and I fixed up an arrangement with Ed to take care of the cipher problems that he had with his pipe organ, and then he would leave a note on the organ Sundays so that when I went in Mondays there was nobody around and I could play the thing to my heart's content. I would go in Mondays and clear up any ciphers or any problems he had and play the organ. That got started when a factory man came through from Cincinnati to give the organ its triannual tune-up. About every 3 years you have to tune those things, and while he was there he needed help, so I spent several weeks helping him. And then after he left, it became my job to take care of that pipe organ, and I was really in my seventh heaven. And I took care of the chimes and the other things around the church at that time for a while. Well, gradually my job dispatching the Consumers Power Company took me away from the organ. And about that time I heard of an organ. It was a brand new Hammond, was purchased by a sailor a fellow who had gone into the Navy, and his father. His father was a well-known musician around town. And the organ originally cost $2,800, and it sat in the parlor of this man's home, and he was killed in a traffic accident. And the boy was in the Navy, and the organ was for sale for the balance that was due on it. A brand new organ, never been set up, never been played at all. And I was able to get in on that deal and buy the organ. It was delivered there, only lived on Leroy Street. And oh boy, then I was in the 19th heaven, I guess, because here I had my own Hammond organ at last, and it was a honey. It was one of the better models that was out at that time, and we just played the daylights out of it. Well, the boy came out of the Navy that had bought the organ in the first place, and he got in touch with me and wanted to know if he could come up and play it. I said, my goodness, yes, come up here and play your heart out. And so he did. I don't think we even stayed around the house. We gave him the freedom of the place while he could really work out his pleasure on the organ. And like I say, he and his dad had bought this thing and never set up. And the finish on it had never yet been polished. It was just out of the crate, and you could even see traces of the old dirt on it. Never been polished for even a showroom display yet. So when it came to me, it was a brand new instrument, and I got it at $700 discount, which is quite a lot of money in those days. Well, time marched on. Gradually, I had more and more exposure to musical instruments. The violin it's fallen by the wayside, and I seemed to be concentrating on mostly organ music, sometimes the piano. Then came a time when Marilee and I were married, and we decided we better see about getting into a church. And I showed up over at Munith, the Methodist church over to Munith, and we'd gone there for a little while, and a young pastor come in there full of fire for the Lord, and he collared me one day, and he knew that I was chording on the piano to singing and so forth, but I couldn't read a single note hardly for the piano. And he asked me how I'd like to play for congregational singing. How would I like to play the organ in church? Well, my goodness, nobody got any closer to heaven than I did when he suggested that. And yet, to play for congregational singing meant knowing being able to read music, and I simply could not read music. But nevertheless, I went in nights and played on that organ till I began to read enough so that I could give a reasonable rendition on a Sunday morning, and so the minister agreed to let me know what songs they were going to ask for, and I could go in and practice hours on them until I could play something acceptable to congregational singing. And the music was liked. It was coming out pretty good, because I had quite a lot of my own inspiration go into those songs once I had learned them. And time went on, and my music became more and more blessed. And then the word came that a lady over at a Methodist home in Chelsea wanted a visit from someone to talk Bible things, and I just felt in my heart that call was for me. So I went over there and started visiting her just about every week. And as time went on, I noticed this big Hammond organ in the main lounge. So I offered to come in and bring them a sing-along each week. Well, this is really stepping out of ways, because this required reading music to a certain extent. But nevertheless, it was accepted, and I tried it, and they liked my music, and that was Oh, that was about 9 years ago, and it's been going on every other week ever since. And those beloved people just love those sing-alongs, and they've kept the inspiration up, so that I've been going all this time. But then in between, I started having a sing-along at the medical facility. About the time Margaret died, I started these sing-alongs regularly there, and then that instance was a piano. So I was bringing the piano along with the organ music, and the whole thing was developing into a beautiful experience. And then the church out of Fitchburg, the little Pentecostal church in which I was ordained, had a nice little can't think of the name of that organ just at the moment, but it is a nice little organ, and it really sounds like a large pipe organ when the music comes forth in the church auditorium there. And I got to playing that along with their singing and with the piano. Their type of music fitted my ability in good shape, because nobody read beyond the melody anyway to speak of. So we got along real good, and my musical ability on the organ just took on a real spiritual aspect, and it's a joy to the people. It's even a joy to me to go in there sometimes when there's nobody around and just play just for the love of hearing that beautiful organ put forth that nice music. And Brother Ed, the pastor, loves that organ music, so I came home here and made a tape on my own organ. Incidentally, I traded my Hammond in while Marilee and I were there at the farm, and I got a Yamaha. It's a full 2-keyboard and full bass pedal organ, and is really a beauty, an outstanding, beautiful musical instrument. Unfortunately, down here in the basement, the music is sort of limited because of the small room and everything. And there are some resonances down here that make certain tones come through too loud. However, it is a beautiful instrument, and I just love playing it. And I have the music on the other side of this tape is an example of some of the random playing, and I promised Charlie I would send him some of that music for his own posterity. So I'm preparing this voice rendition to go along with it. On the other side of this tape is organ music played here on my Yamaha organ. I just obtained this recorder that I'm using now, and I'm hoping to get this over to Fitchburg and record something off of that organ over there. It's such a beautiful setting, and it comes out so beautifully in that large room. But I haven't been able to get to it just yet. However, be that as it may, this is roughly a history of my exposure to music. There has been a guitar along the way which was not mentioned, and at the time I was working on the road up by St. Clair with neighbor Bidwell's, I took along a mandolin, which is strung up like a violin and is used with a pick instead of with a bow. And so I had exposure to a mandolin, a violin, a guitar, and the mandolin did pretty well. The guitar not so good, and yet I got so I could play quite a lot on it. And along with that, of course, goes the ukulele and such like. And then along the way, I got exposed to saxophones and the clarinet. I had a clarinet for a while, and was able to develop a reasonable ability on each of those instruments. And I had the particular joy one New Year's Eve of setting in with another fellow playing his saxophone, and I played his little soprano job, which wasn't any much bigger than a tobacco pipe. And yet we just had one glorious time that New Year's Eve. So music has been a second nature for me, with me all along the way, and I can see the tremendous gift, the tremendous value of this gift that God has given to me. I simply can't put a value high enough to even come anywhere near what it means to me. And the only thing that when I see others enjoying it, then I realize that there's a value even greater than I can see. And I just thank God all over again for this wonderful spiritual uplift in my life that comes from music, and that I'm able to share that with others. So that's a rough history. Incidentally, since we moved out to the farm and I got the organ, I also picked up 3 different accordions being sold at different times in different places and 2 of them at garage sales, and then the 3rd one, the fellow I was working with, Roy Asbury, had got this from some relative of his, and it was all to pieces and not working at all, so he told me to bring it on home if I wanted to and see if I could make it work. So I did. I got the reeds all back in the thing and cemented in with beeswax, and the thing was all working, and I took it back to Roy, and he asked me what I'd give him for it, and I told him I didn't want to set a price on it. It was actually it was 120 bass, a full-size orchestra type accordion, and he said, well, will you give me $50 for it? And I sure will, and I gave him $50. So now that was the 3rd accordion I had. I had a 120 bass white ladies size, which is lighter weight, that we had bought at a garage sale, and then I've got a 48 bass here from Mary Lee, which is smaller and lighter and easy to carry around. And then I've got this big one that I got from Roy here, and right now there's a broken shoulder strap on it, so I can't play the thing, but nevertheless there's music all over the place, and I'd really feel bad if my hearing was terminated and I couldn't hear the beauty of the music that comes out of this world to make my life happier, more enjoyable, more spiritual, more emotional. I guess because of my music, I've been hyper emotional ever since I was a kid, and I wouldn't swap it for anything. So tonight, I sit here thinking about this music, putting this stuff on tape, and thanking the Lord for this wonderful gift. Hallelujah and amen. A couple of memories have come back to me while I was listening to a replay of this. The reed organ that I had at one time with the bed bugs in it went to Nate Marley, and he succeeded in building the 2 reed organs into one console with foot pedals, so that when we connected the thing all up with the vacuum cleaner, we had, to all intents and purposes, a complete organ, and the little lights were installed on the thing, and painted yellow, so it looked just like a theater organ, and this was an awfully close approach to heaven at that time for me, because I used to sit and play that thing by the hour after everybody else gone to bed. Then came the time to move from Jackson to Flint, and this organ was sold to a young man out to Leslie, because we couldn't take it to Flint with us. And of course that organ was never heard of since. Also the little organ out at the Pittsburgh church, which so thrilled my senses, is a Kahn organ. It's a small size organ, but it has a wonderful, wonderful pipe organ voice. And I really enjoy going out there and playing that. And one of these days I'm going to make a nice recording. I can set this thing up in such a way that it plays back into the sound system at the church. And I'll tell you, it just fills that whole church with a special kind of music when I play it back. And I can go back in the back into the church and listen to it and really thrill. Just listen to my own music. So, well, you can't ask for much more than that out of your talent to enjoy it that much. Hallelujah. Charlie, I'm going to send this tape to you. I know you'll enjoy the music, and if you don't get tired of listening to my voice doesn't come through too good on the, there's kind of a nasal sound in there that could get monotonous, but I hope the story is interesting. And I know at times I get quite emotional, Charlie. As you know, the old man, I can get emotional at times. But I think about you kids. Now, Charlene loves music. Charlene has everything I have in music if she'll only let it go. And Margaret loved music. Every kind of music, Margaret loved it. She never was able to do anything of her own except play her Victrola. But boy, oh boy, play it she did. And Mary, too, has what it takes. If she, the trouble is, Rob plays so well that Mary kind of keeps out of the way, but I know she's got what it takes to really enjoy music, and Charlie, you got it too. So I just praise the Lord for the gift He's given you guys, because this is an extra dimension in life, and it's a dimension that will pay you rich rewards if you just pursue it. Pursue it along the line of the instruments and the type of music you like, but don't let it rest. Make it work for you, because there's a real inspiration, and it really pays dividends for your own satisfaction. Well, that's quite a sermon, ain't it? Good talking to you, Charlie, and I hope you didn't get tired of listening to my voice. Right at the moment, I can't listen to you very well, but you've always been a good listener anyway, and I love you for that. Now, Marilee's upstairs watching some TV show here on a Saturday night, so I'll wind this thing up and I'll get it into the mail for you next week. And well, when you coming home? I see you used up some of your vacation for this year, so that probably makes the probability of you coming home a little less. But we think about you a lot, Charlie. And maybe someday you will come back home and take up residence someplace around here. You don't have to come and live with us necessarily, but find your own place in the world here, and we'll see you much more often. Well, anyway, God bless you, and take good care of my boy. Over and off. That's Dad.